Hey guys, I'm Rich from NeoWin. Today we're unboxing the Moto Z3 Play. So this is, the Z series is Motorola's flagship. Personally, I think the whole Motorola lineup has gotten a bit confusing. You can see I have a few other Motorola phones here. Back in the day, when they first started doing the Moto phones, Motorola was owned by Google, and they first did the Moto X, which was the flagship, and they did all that Moto Voice stuff, which was really cool. And then they did Moto G as, a value phone, and they did Moto E for a budget phone. And so eventually Motorola got bought by Lenovo, and Lenovo really started opening it up to more different kinds of phones. Moto Z is now the flagship, but it's really the Moto Z Force, which is the flagship. So right here I have the Moto Z2 Force. They have not announced the Z3 Force. They only announced the Play. And then, of course, they just recently brought back the Moto X. This is the Moto X4. That's the upper mid-range phone. This thing comes in at about $400. And they also have the G6. This just came out. And the G6 comes in G6 Play, G6, and G6 Plus. So there's 3 different models of that. This is the G6 that comes in at $249. And then they still have the E series, which the E5 just came out, and that comes in the E5, E5 Play, and E5 Plus. So there's quite a bit to choose from. And as far as the specs on this go, it's really not that different from the Moto X4. But what the Z series, aside from being the flagship lineup, the Z series is also about modularity. So we have mods that connect to these pins on the back. So you just snap these things on the back of the phone, and then you can do something new. And we'll take a look at that later because I have some mods. And this should also come with the battery mod. Motorola is saying 40 hours of battery life with the Z3 Play if you use the mod. So we can see the phone right here. Typical design. And that's another reason that I brought out the Z2 is because they really can't abandon this body because the mods still have to fit. So they're going to be using this for a while. So it now comes in a deep blue color. This is indigo blue, and it's made of glass now instead of metal, which is not something I'm thrilled about because if you ask me, glass should also come with wireless charging. That's the main value proposition of switching from a metal back to a glass back. If you don't do wireless charging, then it's just more likely to shatter. It's prettier, but functionally it's not as good. So if you want wireless charging, you have to get a mod. And I'm not thrilled with that idea either. It feels like a lot of things are taken away from the device, and if you want it as well, you just get a mod. And these things can add up. I mean, if you just buy one mod, so this is the speaker mod, and what you do, you just snap it back on there, and it just works. Makes the phone a lot thicker, makes the phone a lot heavier, but it is what it is. And the thing is, if you just get one mod, then really you should just have gotten a phone that has that functionality. And these things can get expensive. Some of them are inexpensive, about $50. Some of them are a couple $100. This one right here, this is the Amazon Alexa mod. So this one actually blocks the camera, but it does turn it into a smart speaker, and you can, of course, prop up the phone like that. I also have a 360-degree camera mod. A 360-degree camera mod. So that just goes right on there. And this one doesn't make it quite as thick or heavy, but you do have the camera coming out of the top. So these are the types of things that you can do with the Moto Z series and its modular functionality. There's a gaming controller. All right? Boom. Playing games. And these things, and you just snap them on and they work. So that's what the Moto Z series is all about. And we'll boot this up. It has a Super AMOLED display, which is really nice. The Moto Z2 had it as well. Obviously, the G series and the X series are a little more inexpensive, so they don't have that premium display. So let's see what else is in the box. We've got a lot of paperwork here. We can just leave that aside. And let's see what else. Moto mods. This should be the battery mod that does come with it. So the Moto Play devices tend to have more battery than regular devices. And the original Moto Z Play, I think it was 3510 milliamp hours. All right, the Moto Z2 Play was just 3,000 milliamp hours. This one is also 3,000. So what you can do is you can just snap this on the back, and Motorola says that you can get 40 hours of usage just by attaching this to the phone. So again, some of the mods are thicker, some of them are heavier. This is fine. It kind of makes it feel like a regular phone. One of the complaints that I've had with the Z series is that it almost feels like half a phone. It feels like there should be something on there, even when there isn't. Like, it's so flat and thin. But I kind of love it, too, because it's such a beautiful phone. Okay, so finally what we have in the box is a USB Type-A power adapter. That means that what we're going to have here is a Type-A to Type-C adapter. And then we have a USB Type-C to 3.5 millimeter headphone adapter, because the device does not have a headphone jack. And that's all we've got in the box. Okay, so one more key difference that I want to talk about between the Play and the Force is that the Force is mainly about having a shatterproof screen. And it's also the flagship, right? Because this has a Snapdragon 636 chipset. This has a Snapdragon 835, which is the premium chipset for last year. And when the Moto Z3 Force comes out, that'll have a Snapdragon 845. So other than being a flagship, this is about being shatterproof. It has a shatterproof display. So the thing about that, though, because there are cons to it, when you have a display, you can have harder materials. And so something like sapphire, if you have a sapphire display, that's not going to scratch. But if you drop it, it will shatter. The harder it is, the less likely it is to scratch, the more likely it is to shatter. You can use a softer material, and that will not shatter, but it's very easy to scratch. And I'm not going to do it right now, but when I review this phone, you can actually scratch it with your fingernail with minimal effort. So keep that in mind when you have the shatterproof display. If you use that as a differentiator, you do want a screen protector for that phone. So, of course, there are some new features with this device, and Motorola is focusing on the camera again. Last year, we saw the introduction of the dual lens camera, which adds portrait mode and things like selective black and white and selective focus. What that does is, I mean, we all know what portrait mode is because there are so many phones that have that fake depth effect in the dual lens cameras. Selective black and white will let you change the depth of the photo and change the areas where it's focused on later on. So if we put portrait mode on, right, we get through all the pop-ups. So see, we can change this, and that changes how blurry the background is. And then you can change it more later, or you can tap on another area of the photo. Selective black and white allows you to keep color in certain parts, and that only works on depth-enabled photos. And what's cool is we have something called spot color. All right, and this is a feature that's been around. All this stuff has been around for a little while, but what spot color does is we would tap on a photo, and the rest is black and white. And then, of course, we can add more color here, all right, and then we can take away color. And, I mean, that's a cool feature that I like. So what's new here? We have Cinemagraph. And what Cinemagraph does, all right, here's the explanation, create a GIF with a splash of motion on a frozen image. And what you see in that animation is pretty much what happens. So what you can do is, while you're taking the picture, you can highlight the balloons and say, this is the motion that I want to keep. I want to keep the motion in this area of the photo. And the rest will just stay, it'll be a still image, and you'll see that motion. So here's what I love, is because this was a feature on old Lumia Windows phones. I keep backing out of the camera because these pop-ups keep coming up, and I just want to get rid of them. But this was a feature on old Windows phones. It was called Lumia Cinemagraph, and it worked exactly the same way. And obviously, Windows phones are gone now, and these services, no one's using them anymore. So, I mean, Lumia's had a thing called Color Pop, and that's very much similar to spot color and selective black and white. So it's cool to see some of these features being resurrected. Another thing that's new is that you can get portrait mode from the front camera. Right? We have portrait, we have Cinemagraph, which is great. The only problem with portrait mode from the front camera is that there is no dual camera, which means that you don't get the depth editor afterwards. So you'll get the depth effects, Okay, and let's get through those pop-ups. And you can change it. You can change it right when you're taking the picture. What you can't do, you can't use selective focus, and you can't use selective black and white. So you're going to get the picture, and it's there, which is nice, but you just can't edit it in the same way as you can with the rear camera. So going back to the design of the phone, 6000 series aluminum frame, glass back. We can see that we have the power button over here, and then we have the volume rocker over here, which is just exactly where you'd expect it to be. But what's not where you'd expect it to be is the fingerprint reader right on the side here. Previous models, all right, previous models have had it in various places. So all the ones that I showed you have a fingerprint reader right on the front there, okay? And Motorola has been doing that. The thing is, with some of the lower end ones where the G6 had it on the front, and then I think it was the G6 Play and some of the E5 models had it on the back. And the reason that some of the models had it on the front is because Motorola is doing one-button navigation now, right? So you can go back by hitting this or press it to go home and stuff like that. So you're not going to be able to do that with this phone, although there might be some software option in settings because some companies do that when they ditch that front button navigation. But obviously, if they're not going to keep it on the front, they can't put it on the back because you're supposed to put mods on the back, so that would just be covered up. All right, so I see what they're going for there. They went for an 18:9 display. This is 1080 by 2160. And what's interesting about that is that this is the first Z series phone that has an 18:9 display. This is the common trend with new phones. The Z2 was 16:9. The X4 was 16:9. And in fact, the first 18:9 Motorola phone was the G series here. And in fact, the first 18:9 Motorola phone was the G series here. And it has the same resolution, but it was an IPS LCD. I'm not a huge fan of the idea of having to do this. I think that, oh, forgot which finger I scanned there. I prefer a 16:9 screen. I think it's just fine. I think that we're, putting too much screen on our phones, but this is the going trend. And if they went with 16:9 again, they would be criticized for it, and they'd probably sell less phones, unfortunately. Okay, so we also have Moto, which is the one of the signature features of Motorola devices. All right, by the way, it is Motorola now. You could see from the bottom of the phone here that they're going with Motorola branding, where previous devices, all right, we're going to allow all this stuff. Previous devices have said Moto, like the X4 here. Says Moto at the top. The Z2 said Moto. The G6 said Motorola. So that is the branding that Lenovo has done a lot of rebranding with Motorola over the time that they've had it. Okay, so the suggestions. Let's just go straight to the features. Moto Voice is back, and that is so exciting to me because it really died for a while. We had Moto Voice was like the flagship feature of the original Moto X, and I used to love this thing because I would charge it, at the foot of my bed, and I'd just say, okay, Moto X, good night, and it would put the phone on Do Not Disturb until the morning when I'd say, okay, Moto X, good morning. And it was just such a great feature. But then voice assistants really started to take off. Google started putting Assistant into every single phone, every single Android phone. So Moto Voice didn't make as much sense, especially if you want a second assistant, you're probably going for Alexa or even Cortana. So they started, this thing kind of dwindled down to what they called Show Me. So you would say, Show Me Facebook or something like that, and then it would load that. Which, by the way, it just loaded my Facebook on the Moto X4 because I said that. But that's how it works. So now it's actually coming back as a real voice assistant. Moto Display has lots of cool stuff. Night display. This is the Moto Display. That's the ambient display that you see. And you could change the settings there. Moto Actions, 3-finger screenshot, one button. Oh, so you can do one-button navigation somehow. Oh, yeah, so it adds a bar to the bottom of the screen. That's interesting. We're going to stay away from that for now. But yeah, so there's lots of cool stuff in the Moto app. And if you have any Motorola phone, I highly suggest that you check out that app because it's packed with cool stuff. And that cool stuff doesn't get in the way of it doesn't clutter up the settings app. So it's on its own. So, you know, just check it out because it's stuff that's unique to the phone and it's not cluttering up the UI like a lot of other companies tend to do. Anyway, guys, that's it. I'll have a review on this in a few weeks. I'm kind of already in love with it. I was in love with it when they briefed me on it because I find Cinemagraph really exciting because I think that a lot of the features that Motorola adds to phones are just fun. They're reminiscent of older phones that I used to have, of features that have died over the years. And you know, I can't wait to play with this phone more. Anyway, guys, that's it. I'm Rich from NeoWin. Have a great night.